our state is facing an agricultural crisis.
Wisconsin's Dairyland at a crossroads.
We aren't going to save every dairy farm. We know that.
Meet the farmers fighting for their future.
Doing the very best we can for what we do.
And dive into the issues all farmers face across the state.
It's been an unsettled weather period in the last 5 years, as the industry works to overcome what could be its biggest challenge ever.
Sales slowing down and jobbing things out, we've gone to less and less employees.
But there's hope to save these farms to be ready for the future generation.
I think this is going to be a clear turning point in our farm's history.
Dairyland at a Crossroads, a special Quincy Media News presentation.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Amber Noggle.
And I'm George Smith. Tonight we're taking a deeper look at Wisconsin's Dairyland at a crossroads, facing a challenge that's changing the industry.
We'll tell you about those struggles, the impact on the state, and the ways communities are stepping up to help Wisconsin's biggest business.
For more than a century, Wisconsin has been known as the dairy state, home to more dairy farms than any other, with more than 1 million cows. State statistics show the industry contributes more than $45 billion to the economy every year, boosting other industries like manufacturing, veterinary care, and construction.
Still, many farmers aren't able to make ends meet in a tough market. Jennifer Cleasy joins us from a farm in Portage, digging deeper into why family farms are disappearing.
The Hines family has been on this farm near Portage since 1872 during the birth of the state's dairy industry. But Wisconsin's storied history could be at risk of being lost on a steady decline for years. These cows are all that's left of this family's dairy legacy.
How long can you do this before you lose everything?
Mark Hines is the 6th generation in his family who's fought through the ups and downs of farming.
Like most farmers, we took on more debt, quite honestly, and to keep going. And that's kind of your only option at that time.
But low milk prices have brought losses unlike any other.
That's all we've known is this is a dairy farm. So it was really hard.
The dairy side of our business was failing and it was dragging everything else down. So that's why for us we had to make the difficult decision to sell our cows.
This spring, Mark and his wife Beth sold off most of their herd, preparing for a big change on their Portage farm.
It was sad to see the cows go and go through the barn at the end of the night.
We've had a lot of farm loss, an unusual number.
Dairy Policy Analysis Director Mark Stevenson says Wisconsin will lose 9% of farms every year. State ag data shows 5,500 fewer dairy farms than there were a decade ago.
Milk prices have been low, going into their 5th year right now.
Price is just one factor making it harder to run a business. Costs of technology and labor, plus retiring farmers with no one to take over.
Not just a bump on a trend line. This is more like a deviation that's bigger.
But farmers like Mark and Beth Hines aren't giving up.
We need to be sustainable for the environment and sustainable economically.
They're still running the farm without the dairy cows, selling beef to the community, baling hay for farmers, and experimenting with new crops.
We're certainly not out of the woods yet with our farm, but at least we're in a place where we feel like we're finally on a path that we have some control over and are optimistic about the future.
Holding out hope their sons can continue the Hines legacy.
Things are tough right now, but this is when the most opportunities come by too.
The Hines family says they may someday get back into dairy once the farm is more sustainable. Right now, selling beef directly to the consumer means they don't have to pay as many cuts to others like before. The Hines farm was one of 75 facing a crisis in 2017 when milk processor Grassland Dairy stopped buying their milk because of Canadian trade rules. Dairy experts say it's become a trend in the industry, fewer places to send milk and dairy plants getting larger. Farmers face a lot of challenges they can't control. The weather is harsh in Wisconsin, but recently it's been unforgiving. Michelle Alfini has you covered on how floods and droughts are making it harder for farmers to make ends meet.
On a hot September day, Mystic Valley Dairy is working to beat the heat.
Well, it's our goal to make our cows really happy.
Owner Mitch Breinig says happy cows are clean, cool, and comfortable.
Cows do not like humidity. We don't like humidity either.
Which means trying to control the uncontrollable.
Everything we do revolves around weather.
He says it's easier in the barns. There his 600 cows rest on cool sand, getting constant showers.
Just being aware of the weather and the challenges it's causing, it just makes you have to just do really well in your farming practices.
Keeping cows happy also means making sure they're eating right. And with all the ingredients for the feed grown right here on the property, that can bring its own set of weather challenges.
The rain that we've been having, it just doesn't get dry enough to harvest.
But with storms in the forecast again, Breinig has to rush to gather what he can.
It's just a struggle to have 5 days in a row that's dry.
It isn't just this year. Meteorologist Bob Lindmeyer says years of heavy rain are flooding fields and tightening growing seasons statewide.
We've always had extreme rainfall events, but they're more extreme and becoming more numerous as our atmosphere is warming.
If the unsettled weather pattern continues, he says droughts could be likely in a few years. For Breinig, there's no easy fix. He says he simply has to work harder to cool his herd.
The cooling isn't quite as effective when it's humid.
All while coping with shrinking growing seasons to keep them fed.
If we don't do that, we're not going to leave our farm for the next generation.
In Sauk City, Michelle Alfini reporting.
For decades, farmers have been saying Wisconsin's cooler weather and plentiful water have been ideal for raising cows. But George and Amber scientists say if it keeps getting hotter and more severe, that climate could be at risk.
Amid other pressures, the ongoing U.S.-China trade war is hitting Wisconsin farmers, including the $30 million a year ginseng industry.
The crop is sold almost exclusively overseas. Melissa Langben has you covered from Wausau on how growers are getting by.
Marathon County, in the heart of central Wisconsin, is known as the ginseng capital of the world. Gardens like this dot the countryside, and they provide shade for the ginseng, which thrives in the soil, enriched by glaciers and cool summer weather. The roots coveted for health benefits.
It is the Bordeaux of wine. It's the fine stuff, the most expensive.
About 85% of the crop is exported to Asia.
For the most part, it does end up in China.
We have no other market.
It's had an impact.
With the trade war brewing since last April, the Chinese have placed retaliatory tariffs on ginseng imports from the United States. So the average $26 to $29 price per pound has skyrocketed.
You're adding about a 38 to 40% tax on a product that was already quite expensive.
At Sue's Ginseng near Wausau, the 2019 harvest is underway.
It's created a backlog. We'll probably have about 30% of last year's crop unsold when we have this year's crop coming in.
He says trade tensions have cost the company millions of dollars and created fears that existing customers will be lured away by cheaper competitors in China and Canada.
As the tariffs go on longer, our people can be like, well, it's not worth investing in ginseng grown in Wisconsin.
So growers look to create new markets in the U.S. and other countries. But the clock is ticking, and growers hope time is on their side. Reporting in Marathon County, I'm Melissa Langben.
Governor Evers sent a letter to President Trump last month urging him to end the trade war. The governor says Wisconsin's $88 billion ag industry employs 1 of 9 workers in the state.
All of this hurts the bottom line, leaving some struggling to pay back loans. Federal data shows 3% of Wisconsin farmers are past due this year, the most since 2001. Well, Monday, State Bank's president says 1/3 of the bank's loans are for agriculture and ag real estate. The bank tries to work with farmers before they default to help them pay off loans.
The stress on our farmers just keeps escalating.
All these pressures are putting a strain on farmers' mental health, the resources available to bring them the help they need.
Plus, protecting our waterways, how farmers are teaming up to reduce their impact on the state's precious resources. That's coming up as Dairyland at a Crossroads continues.
Dairyland at a Crossroads, a special Quincy Media News presentation.
Dairy is an identity in Wisconsin, but it may not be that way for much longer.
Right now, the dairy state leads the nation in family farm bankruptcies. But as Andrea Albers shows us, the repercussions are beyond financial.
Farming is a proud tradition, but it can be a solitary and stressful one. According to the CDC, farmers are more likely to die by suicide than the rest of the general population.
An analysis just released by Ohio State University shows suicide rates are spiking, especially in rural America, where many people rely on jobs in agriculture.
We found that social deprivation, poverty, low income, unemployment was associated with suicide.
Calls to the Wisconsin Farm Center, a resource for distressed farmers, are growing as pressures rise.
Farmers face stress factors
that may be unique from other occupations.
In early September, Wisconsin's DATCAP Secretary Brad Paff pushed the Joint Finance Committee to designate $200,000 for farmers struggling with mental health. Some GOP lawmakers argued the funding should be held until the state's new task force on suicide prevention issues policy recommendations this fall. But ultimately, it was approved.
I would expect that we do much bigger things on this issue once the committee comes out with their recommendations.
Now the Wisconsin Farm Center can provide at-risk farmers with more vouchers for counseling.
There was a period of time a couple months ago that I didn't go a week without a farmer crying on me. It was difficult.
Farm educators at Western Technical College in La Crosse call the added vouchers a step in the right direction, but also say the state needs counselors that are more readily available and better suited for farmers.
I've been in agriculture now professionally for 20 years. And so I feel like the stress on our farmers just keeps escalating.
Reporting in La Crosse, Andrea Elbers.
State officials say 95 counseling vouchers have been given out. Nearly half have been redeemed.
The state money will also pay for stress management workshops. If you or someone you know needs help, you can contact the Wisconsin Farm Center to talk with someone. A community impacted. Still ahead, how the struggles for farmers are passed on to other industries.
There is definitely a place for family dairy farms in Wisconsin's future.
There's hope amid crisis as farmers face their biggest obstacles, the families finding ways to carry on, and the help they're getting across the state.
Dairyland at a Crossroads, a special Quincy Media news presentation.
Farms have drawn criticism for their impact on water quality, runoff getting into the lakes and contaminating drinking water.
Caroline Bach shows us how one group is protecting one of the most prominent waterways in southern Wisconsin.
A typical September day at Jeff Endra's farm in Wanakee. Every day, there's a focus on conservation.
It's very important that, the farmers continue to be great stewards of the land.
Endres is also the chairman of the Yahara Pride Farms Board.
There's a perception out there that agriculture isn't doing what it needs to do, and I think it's quite the opposite.
That's what the nearly 40 participants in Yahara Pride Farms aim to do, bring agricultural messages and ideas into the urban population, as well as promote innovative ideas, especially for soil health and water quality.
So this water that falls from the sky is the water that's shared by everybody.
Some of the steps Endres and other farmers take: cover crops, low disturbance and tillage, and composting.
But water quality isn't just something that Jeff is concerned about, or Yahara Pride Farms. It's getting statewide attention. In fact, Governor Tony Evers just recently called on agencies to address nitrate contamination in water.
Nitrate contamination in private wells is one of the top water contaminants in Wisconsin and poses serious health risks to infants and pregnant women.
The practices that we are using also help in sequestering nitrogen, especially the cover crops in the fall of the year.
The Yahara Pride farmers are particularly focused on phosphorus reduction.
We do a report every year. I think this year we're pushing like 20,000 pounds of reductions.
While Endres acknowledges the practices may not be perfect, especially during the winter months, that's why his group is constantly collaborating.
Well, when we can learn from each other and share back and forth and work together.
Keeping Wisconsin moving forward. Reporting in Wanakee, I'm Caroline Bach.
Farmers aren't the only ones struggling in the dairy industry. Cheesemakers are feeling the effects too. Jennifer Cleese is back with more on the impact for them.
Wisconsin is #1 for cheese, making a quarter of the nation's cheese. That's nearly 3.5 billion pounds just last year. There are more than 1,200 licensed cheesemakers leading the nation in specialty cheeses. It's expensive to get into cheese, but some farmers have been considering it to find a use for the milk they can't sell. UW helps connect prospective producers with resources to get started, but experts say overall, when the farmers struggle, so do the cheesemakers.
A lot of our cheese plants here in the state are directly affected by these low milk prices, which are directly related to low cheese prices.
We're kind of weighing what's happening next year. It may mean that we're buying less milk, and making less cheese next year.
Anna Landmark, who runs Landmark Creamery in Belleville, says she's bracing for the possibility her cheese business might not grow, though they haven't had to make any cuts yet. And industries outside dairy are impacted by farmers' struggles too. Jesse Slater has you covered on how one family's business might be on its last generation of manufacturing.
Take me into your loving arms.
The Schmid family in Hayward, Wisconsin have spent most of their lives building equipment that's purchased by dairy farmers.
Manufacture chemical dispensers for pipeline washers for the dairy industry.
Bender Machine Works, a three-generation shop, once thrived on manufacturing dairy pipeline and wash controls for businesses around the globe. Today, it's struggling to stay afloat.
Our total sales have gone down probably 40% since the better years.
Jeff and his wife Cindy run the small family shop. They say the issue is all about supply and demand.
I think with the development of the robotics and the mega farms, it's sort of cut our product out.
A once highly involved business crumbling under the weight of overproduction of milk. This basement used to be inhabited by up to 30 machinists producing products, but now with the spiral of the dairy industry and the advancements in machinery, they are down to just 3.
Sales slowing down and jobbing things out, we've gone to less and less employees.
The family making ends meet wherever they can.
When I have free time, I help a friend of mine with his carpentry business.
Relying on the dairy industry to take a turn for the better.
There's not a lot of hope actually for this business, but perhaps if the prices of milk turned around, it would probably help our growth.
For now, the family is keeping the business above water, hoping to pass it down to the next generation.
Get a paycheck and pay our bills and stay in northern Wisconsin because we like to live here. We love it here.
Reporting from Hayward, I'm Jesse Slater.
The Schmid family says they're working to find new ways to develop products and reach more industries. Coming up, the search for those fresh ideas for our farms, the state commitments, and the work to encourage young people to become the future of the industry.
Dairyland at a Crossroads, a special Quincy Media news presentation.
Farmers are facing many challenges right now, but there's a lot of hope for a brighter future.
Just this month, lawmakers put forward a new set of proposals to help. It would create positions at UW to teach farmers how to plan for handing down their business to younger family members. It's been a challenge for some aging farmers who don't have anyone ready to take over.
If we were to talk to the farmers that went out of business, some of those farmers could have been saved had we had appropriate extension planning.
The planning process needs to be started early and have something in place so it doesn't all come up as a surprise.
The $500,000 bill proposal also would help farmers pay off college debt and create a grant program to support small producers working to start new operations. Despite the tough market, an Eau Claire family has found a way to keep things going for future generations.
Katrina Lynn tells us how they've been able to expand as others close up.
Miranda Nelson, her husband Derek, and father-in-law Doug run Nellie Holstein's in southern Eau Claire. What started out as a small 3-cow dairy farm in 1895 is now a 5th-generation, 300-acre farm. For the Nelsons, it was either auction or expand.
To provide 2 incomes for a family, we had to milk more than 50 cows, so we had to expand, and that's what led us to this operation. Otherwise, we were going to have to choose to sell the cows eventually.
Now at 180 cows, their growth comes as neighbors shut down their operations.
I've seen people that have nearby that have had to close. The market's been the biggest driver lately more than anything.
You're not really in it for money, obviously. It's something that you have to want to do.
The Nelsons spend 3 to 4 hours outside working in the field. But the real work happens inside the barn.
And the first thing we do is milk the cows. We milk twice a day at 5 and 5.
But when you labor with love, other perks followed.
I'm basically my own boss. I work a lot of hours, but at the same time, I really enjoy what I do. I couldn't really imagine doing anything else.
But overall, it's just the camaraderie and getting to see what our family can do and progress and improve within the dairy industry.
Reporting in Eau Claire, I'm Katrina Lim.
The Nelsons say they hope to pass the dairy down to a 6th generation of farmers.
The future of a changing industry starts with research. Jennifer Cleese joins us again to tell us how the University of Wisconsin is doing its part to keep dairy in business.
UW-Madison was the first in the nation to add a dairy school in 1890. This summer, the state approved nearly $9 million for a dairy innovation hub to advance work at UW-Madison, Platteville, and River Falls. The campus research has helped farmers lower costs by developing best practices, new technologies, and ideas. New ideas are the focus for the Center for Dairy Research at UW-Madison's Babcock Hall. It's where cheese and ice cream is made for the popular dairy store, bringing the community on campus to see the work being done in the industry. UW is building a new beverage innovation facility there this fall, where researchers will look into alternative uses for extra milk.
It's important for us to be that bridge between the world-class research that's going on this campus and translate it to the industry.
They're looking into shelf-stable milk products and also working to encourage local yogurt and specialty butter producers to find markets. These are just a handful of examples of things UW researchers are doing to find creative solutions to help farmers, like what we saw here at Lewiston Farmstead, avoiding closing up for good. Reporting in Portage, I'm Jennifer Cleese.
Farmers are getting help from outside Wisconsin right now, too.
Farm Aid's 2019 concert is supporting local farmers.
The network of advocates bringing popular artists to Alpine Valley and East Troy to raise money for farms in the upper Midwest. Plus, Luke Bryan's farm tour is coming to a Dane County farm in Marshall next week, raising money for Feeding America. As we look to the future of Wisconsin's legacy ag industry, farmers have hope for what's ahead.
The commitment from the state and people like you helping them get through these challenges. Thank you for joining us.